Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Presentations, MHS Student Advisory.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're pleased to have the Student Advisory here today to give some updates to the school committee. I'm going to call it randomly, and first I'd like to have Abigail Hennessy talk about fall athletics during the pandemic. I know Abby's mic is working, so let's hear from her first.
Okay. Hi, my name's Abby Hennessy. I'm a sophomore at Marlborough High School, and today I'm going to be talking about some athletes' perspectives on Fall 1 sports with the COVID modifications and being able to go back to playing after your last meeting. I gathered some perspectives from the Fall 1 sports teams, including girls and boys cross country, girls and boys soccer, field hockey, and golf. Out of all the 11 athletes I spoke with, there were 9 that wanted to get back to participating and playing in games and meets, and I thought it was really important. Even with all the modifications, the positive outweighed the negatives, and most felt like it was 100% worth it. Most felt that the modifications were manageable and that it was important for the seniors to get one last season. Senior captain of the boys soccer team, Joey Van Buskert, said, "Obviously, at first, getting used to the new rules and restrictions was difficult, but as a team, we made the decision that whatever the restrictions were, we wanted to play out our last season as seniors in a Marlborough uniform. It hasn't been perfect every step along the way, but we have really enjoyed ourselves. Coaches have made sure that we are socially distant and making sure that we are wearing our masks. So far, not one player has tested positive. I look forward to being at practice every day, and when we're able to play, the excitement and enjoyment of being able to be with my teammates outweighs any restrictions or guidelines. For many of us, it's still the game we love to play no matter what. I think it is extremely important we continue to play and give the kids an opportunity to do so." Field hockey captain Abby Federico said, "At first, hearing all of the modifications to sports was disappointing, and I worried that the season would feel so abnormal compared to previous years. However, once I was actually out on the field with the teammates practicing and playing games, we were so happy to just be there and having fun, we barely noticed the modifications. As a senior, the most important thing to me was simply getting to experience my last season. In all the crazy times, playing games and going to practices were the highlight of my day. And I know that I, along with all the other seniors, really appreciated all the work that everyone put in to make the season happen. I think that student athletes being able to play this year is extremely important. Although this fall season may have looked different from last year's, I would not trade the time I got to spend with my team playing this sport I love for anything. With everything going on in the world, sports are a break for athletes where they can just enjoy themselves." Jacob Naeem from the boys cross country team said, "I don't think the modifications have affected our sport a lot. We have adjusted well. I think it is worth it to come back. The only big difference is that we are racing in waves of 10 and we have to wear masks on us at all times. But these are all pretty minor." An underclassman from the boys soccer team said, "Personally, I think playing this late is not really worth it, but I do understand that it's the seniors' last season, so we should still play, and I feel that it's going great. The only downside is obviously the masks. Other than that, it feels normal." A few athletes from cross country and golf felt like the limited amount of practice and the season stopping and starting really hurt the teams in being able to compete and practice fully. One athlete did not think it was worth it to play because there were no playoffs or anything to look forward to at the end of the season. Overall, for this one athlete, it was hard to be motivated without playoffs and having less practices. As you can see, sports are really important to most of these kids, and they really want to play with the modifications and take any opportunity they can get. These athletes have adjusted to wearing masks and have learned to work with what they had. It was about teamwork, participation, and enjoyment of their sport. As we all know, things are always changing but one thing has stayed the same, and that is that all kids love to play their sport and get outside and be with their friends. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Abby. Fantastic report. Now I'm going to ask Hattie Parker if she can talk about the remote learning for juniors and college preparation opportunities.
Hattie, if you did call in, you may have to press *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, Hattie, as you're working on that, why don't we jump to Jessica. Jessica, you're going to talk about schedule and class choices.
Hello, I'm Jessica, and I'm talking about scheduling and class choices. So this year, I was able to talk to some of other students and asking them just how scheduling has worked for them with Corona, and also the difference of being fully remote or hybrid, even though we are all fully remote now. But for a really majority of the students, they said that it was honestly pretty easy, pretty flexible, and they were really happy with how things were going, and they also that it felt much less stressful. But I also know that for some kids, that they were not able to take some of the classes they wanted due to being and because of the 6-period schedule instead of the 7-period schedule, and they feel like that because of that, that will affect their future classes that they want to take.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. Next up, Doug, is Hattie ready, or does she need technical assistance?
I can't unmute her myself, so I'm typing in for her to try the *6.
Okay, Hattie, if you did call in on the phone, if you press on the phone *6, it should unmute you so you can speak to the committee on the phone.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you. Thank you.
All right. Good evening. My name is Hattie Parker, and I'm the 11th grade SAC representative. Today I will be talking about the junior class remote learning experience and what we hope to gain from the rest of the year in terms of college prep. It seems the junior class is adapting well to the fact that we are full remote, and there is a large understanding that it's what's necessary to keep everyone healthy. And while we may not be getting the junior experience, that's just how this year unfortunately has to go. The main difficulties our class is facing because of remote learning is the workload, mental health struggles that come with being full remote, and the fear of not getting college prep opportunity. I know that many students are grateful to not have to go back and forth between the hybrid model and then switching to remote. I know that my classmates, especially those taking AP and honors classes, feel that being remote and having a large workload can often make us feel like we're doing school 24/7 and there's no separation between that and our personal lives. This has been hard on students mentally. When you add isolation, anxiety, and in some cases toxic home environments, things have not been easy. The junior class really needs emotional support anywhere we can get it. Because the junior class is full of go-getters, we really want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to be prepared for college, and the fear of being full remote might hinder our opportunities. Important things that have been happening for our class, and we have not been informed of them, such as the update of GPAs, class ranks, and virtual fall college visits. That's something majorly helpful, and many students missed out on a great opportunity because we were not informed. The junior class would really appreciate better communication from guidance or whoever it may be, so that we can be assured that despite the changes we have had to face educationally, we will still be prepared and well equipped to handle the college admission process. Thank you.
Thank you, Hattie. And sorry the thing didn't work so well and you had to call in, but I appreciate you being patient with us.
Everything, that's okay. Thank you so much.
And we're also going to have Risha talk about the incoming freshman experience.
Hi, my name is Risha Kandaria, and I'm a freshman.
And so the freshman experience was definitely something that was different. We weren't really sure what to expect going into a normal freshman year. So it was a lot harder going into this version of freshman year. Something that a lot of freshmen are struggling with are like not being able to meet and speak with upperclassmen. So it's harder to get involved, and many students don't know what clubs and extracurriculars are offered. So it's harder for them to get involved. Something else is the workload and transition from middle school to this freshman year. The workload was a lot to handle because it was so different from 8th grade, and it's just hard for all of the freshmen to adjust to that, especially this year when everything's online and there's a lot more to do, a lot more to handle during online classes. And we're in an environment with many distractions, and it's just something that we're not used to. I know it's something that everyone's not used to, but this is something specifically I heard from freshmen. And something else was the lack of consistency, some classes not happening every day, or when we're switching from remote to hybrid, the lessons didn't line up, which was something that students really struggled with. But the main thing was definitely not being able to get involved and missing out on a regular high school experience. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the committee? Thank you all very, very much. I think that's the first update we've had since March.
Yep.
Some normalcy, not much, but. Okay.
You're muted.
Thank you all very much. We'll see you at the next update.
Thank you all. Next, Mr. Mayor, I have Mr. Riley here, and he is going to present the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. The criteria for eligibility to obtain a John and Abigail Adams Scholarship is that students must have scored either advanced in the mathematics and English, arts, or a grade 10 MCAS and score proficient in the other subject with a combined score of the top 25% of the school district. And Mr. Riley is going to recognize the students in the class of 2021 for their achievement. Thank you for being here tonight, Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Superintendent Bergeron, and thank you to our student ambassadors for the wonderful feedback. Those students also sit on our Student Leadership Council at MHS, and what I love about the approach that we're trying to take this year is we're really trying to get to the heart of the matter of what are the things that we can focus on to help improve the school. So wonderful presentations by our students tonight. To build off of what Superintendent Bergeron said about the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has created this Merit Scholarship program to reward hard work and achievement by Massachusetts students and to encourage students to go to college at one of our top-notch public higher education institutions. The scholarship entitles the recipient to 4 years of free tuition at any University of Massachusetts campus or any state or community college. The choice is based on outstanding MCAS results as Superintendent Bergeron just overviewed for us. So for 2021, I am very proud to announce the following students have been selected as John and Abigail Adams Scholarship recipients. Paul Alcantar, Amanda Kelly Almeida, Haley Arsenault, Jack Adavis, Valerie Berrios, Nicholas Calderon, Amelia Carlman, Alejandro Cavallo, Carlucio Chavez, Roe Chen, Damon Coltran, Jeffrey Cody, Nathan Crisafulli, Natalie Cruz, Abigail DeWeezick, Christian Dela Cruz, Luis De Leon, Timothy Del Vecchio, Zach Devens, Jacqueline Dillon, Samantha Dion, Victoria Dos Reis, Matthew Farrell, Abigail Federico, Alexander Francis, Samantha Gamber, Stephanie Garcia Monroy, Brittany Garcia, Hezeki Joy Gadula, Cody Gehrig, Hannah Gluck, Lindsay Gomez, Elizabeth Grasso, Benjamin Haman, Arlene Hernandez Canty, Lucas Hone, Matthew Hudzakiewicz, Andrew Landry, Kelly LeConte, Oscar Lopez Castillo, Andrea Lopez Santos, Allison Lucas, Kaylee Morales, Laura Nelson, Brian O'Leary, Christopher Oliveira, Tristan Onofre, Cayman Pacific, Ryan Pearl, Marissa Petty, Eli Plummer, Anna Ocello Maroney, Mateus Pontes, Jessica Popovichak, Christina Priest, Paige Romsey, Joseph Sawicki, Amy Shanahan, Brianna Sheehan, Matthew Skillings, Amanda Spooner, Jonas Struthers, Allison Trin, Nora Tynan, Yesela Vieira, Mia Weeks, Madeline Whitman, and Erin Zeizug. Those are our recipients for 2021, and congratulations to all of those students and their families. You make us very proud.
Thank you, Mr. Riley.
That's fantastic. Hopefully, a chunk of these kids get down to UMass and take advantage of this. I know a lot of them have other aspirations, but it's really a great opportunity to use a great school system. So, congratulations, and hopefully, again, we'll be seeing these kids again, I'm sure.
And congratulations, Allison. You were on the list as well, so thank you.
UMass bound?
I did apply to UMass Amherst.
All right, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I start, I just want to let the committee know that Ms. Eileen Barry would like to address the committee tonight. There really isn't a portion of the agenda for me to place that on, so I figured I would let you know that now in my report, so that way you have an opportunity to hear from Ms. Barry, who is the president of the MEA. So first, I'd like to start by talking about the updated fall COVID data. As I was putting this report together, I was including some links to some of the state dashboards, and they hadn't come out with the report as of the time of the printing of my report, so I couldn't include it. The reason is that they were drastically changing the report, and we found that out after the fact. So where we stand currently is that we have 7 cases. I know in the report we had reported that there were 10 cases overall. Right now we have 7 cases. Cases have recovered since my last report, and there was a net increase of new cases to be reported at that time. Contracts have definitely decreased across the board, except for Goodnow, where we did have to quarantine a classroom on November 3rd due to a positive case. As of writing of this report last week, we had 4 additional cases coming on, and that is similar to what I'm reporting to you tonight. There are several symptomatic children that we are in contact with. They have been tested. We are waiting for results to get into the Maven system, so that way we can contact the families and follow up. So that's my update for the local COVID. My second item for tonight is snow days during the school year. I think this should please the seniors in some ways. For the 2020-2021 school year, because of the pandemic, each district created a plan that includes a remote learning model. As set out in DESE regulations, remote learning may include synchronous or asynchronous components, provided that students have opportunities to regularly interact with teachers, such as through feedback, office hours, and other regularly scheduled individual student interactions. Remote learning models must include the following components: procedures for all students to participate in remote learning, including a system for tracking attendance and participation. Remote academic work shall be aligned to state standards. A policy for issuing grades for student remote academic work, and teachers and administrators shall regularly communicate with students and their parents and guardians, including providing interpretation and translation services to limited English proficient parents and guardians. The Commissioner has determined that for this school year only, for 2020-2021, if there are days when schools must close because of inclement weather or other emergencies, districts may choose to treat these as snow days to be made up, or provide all students with a remote learning on those days in a manner that's consistent with the regulatory requirements listed above. The decision will be made at the local level. I am asking the committee to allow me to call remote days in advance of inclement weather instead of snow days. This will benefit the district by allowing us to keep our current calendar in place in our original end date of June 18th. The only reason to have a school cancellation to be made up later in June would be for widespread power outages and other emergencies that could disrupt the ability to deliver remote learning service to students. So what this allows us to do is, instead of reacting to a snow day the day of, if we know there's going to be inclement weather in the city and we're pretty sure that the storm will be coming at a certain point, we can call in advance, give parents notification, and let them know that that will be a remote day for all students, and no students will be reporting into the building. What the Commissioner is saying is that we will be able to count that day as a school day. We will not have to make that up at the end of June. But it is a local decision, so I do bring that in front of the committee tonight for your discussion. If it pleases, I'll continue on with my report. We can come back. Okay. I also would like to, as my third item, recognize Nicole Fallon. Congratulations to Nicole Fallon, as she was selected by the CMADA Executive Board as the District E's winner for Outstanding Athletic Administrative Assistant Award. That's a mouthful. Winners of the Outstanding Athletic Administrative Assistant Award are recognized for their meritorious service and exemplary contributions to their interscholastic athletic department. And Nicole has just done a fantastic job for us. She has been working over at the Hildreth program this year with Mr. Radzinski, and we all owe them a debt of gratitude for all of their hard work this year. I am leaving the discussion for metrics on in-person learning for last. I do want to let you know that I did include my goals as an action item on the agenda for FY21. I did present them at the last meeting for you to read, and if you had any questions for me. And again, my unofficial goal to review the ability to have MHS have a later start in the morning to reflect the research on adolescent sleep schedules and school performance is my unofficial 5th goal for the committee at this time. Staffing update, we currently have 17 positions open as opposed to 22 the last month we reported to you. Since the creation of this report, I have hired several positions. I believe we're now down to 14. But it is very much behavior techs, paraeducators, and custodians that we're looking for, support staff positions across the district that we are having a difficult time filling. So anybody watching this, anybody who's seen our lawn signs, anyone who's seen any of our outreach or seen our jobs on School Spring, we are looking for folks to come and be part of the MPS team, specifically behavior techs, paraeducators, and custodians. And lastly, I did want to bring up again for the committee to discuss the metrics on returning to in-person learning. And I'm happy to take any questions at this time about the snow day metrics. Or also, I did want to say that Ms. Berry did want to address the committee as well. So I leave that up to you for your next steps.
Do that now? Sure. One thing before we comes up, we have an MEDC jobs fair on Thursday night.
Yes.
A lot of those have been paid. I don't know if you can reach out to Meredith early Thursday morning and see if we can tie this one in also.
I'm happy to report, Mr. Mayor, that Ms. Moran has already created some slides for us.
Of course she has.
Yes, she's done a fantastic job. So, and I appreciate MEDC allowing us to kind of sneak in there as a governmental entity. I know several of the businesses in town are very much in the same place we are. And
It's,
we're all trying to hire.
I've had 3 calls to my office. It's never happened in the 9 years I've been there, and it's everything from entry-level jobs to mid-level management, and you know, it's just ridiculous that we can't fill some of these spots, but great. Eileen?
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. Good evening, Mayor Vigent and school committee members. I am here to speak on behalf of the educators of Marlborough. We are and have always been a resilient group rising up to the many and various challenges that come our way in any given school year. As we all know, this school year has been like no other experience before. Some teachers have switched from hybrid to remote, while others have switched from hybrid to remote and back again to hybrid. There is great concern as yet another decision is before you following Governor Baker's press conference from Friday, November 6th, stating he wants students back in school. Many are puzzled at the mixed messages coming from the state. Families have been discouraged from and told not to gather during this upcoming holiday season. However, we are told it is safe to send students back into school buildings. We as educators know wholeheartedly students learn best when they are in classrooms, and that teachers teach best with the students in front of them. At this present time, sending students back needs to be done with the best interest of students, family, and teachers in mind. Most Marlborough teachers are in their 4th week of remote teaching and learning. Although not an ideal situation, we have built up a rhythm and instituted consistent routines for teaching students remotely. Our students have started to respond to the routines and have built relationships with classmates in their opposite cohorts. There is more instructional time for all students in this remote model. I ask that you consider giving us and our students more consistency by remaining in this remote model and to reevaluate the situation in January, as was originally proposed at the October 27th school committee meeting. So I thank you for letting me speak tonight. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Diaz? No?
Just a couple items on the table, Mr. Mayor.
More?
First,
Are we gonna talk about them now, or you wanna wait?
well, that's up to the committee whether they
What do you-
want to wait. But the 2 items, I guess, on the table are for snow days.
Right, do
And
you
then
wanna
the,
deal with them
discussion
now,
for
or,
remote.
okay?
Yes.
I just figured that's gonna be a while. Relax and sit back. Any feedback on the snow days? Ms. Matthews?
Just for clarification purposes, that also one of the additional positive points of being able to call it the day before is for the pre-K through 2 that are in person will have the ability to take their technology home with them.
Yep. So that's a great point. Thank you for making that. I failed to do so. One of the things we're going to have to get better at is predicting storms as opposed to reacting to storms. And I am one to not call it the night before. I think everyone has figured that out. I like to see the snow on the ground before I call it, which means we get a lot of calls between 5:30 and 6 in the morning. What this is going to do is allow us to look at forecasts and say, if there is a high chance of snow, we're going to be letting people know 1-2 days in advance to get ready, bring their technology home if they're currently in person, and get ready for a remote day on what would be the snow day. The only thing that I would tell you would potentially throw a bit of a monkey wrench into this plan would be is if there are major power outages in the city. So usually snow, not a problem. Ice is different. Ice can knock out power lines. Ice can knock out power to the city for quite some time. If that's the case, we may not be able to have a remote day if a large percentage of the students can't log into their classes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Crusoe.
This just brings up another point for me. If you call a snow day and you're not right, will the state still allow you to count that?
So if, I don't know if I understand your question,
doing
Mr. Crusoe, if we
remote.
call a remote day because we're expecting snow and it does not snow, can we still count it? And the answer is yes, as long as we're still doing the remote day.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's always a little bit of pressure on calling a snow day. However, that's something that is a little bit different this year.
Other questions?
Actually,
Ryan.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Christie, you can
Oh.
continue.
Not my fault, I had my back. I'm sorry.
I have to say, I'm not a fan of taking away the snow days. I feel like we've taken so much from the kids that it's like something else we're taking from them. It's kind of like a rite of passage. I feel like everybody needs a break once in a while, and those snow days sometimes come at the right time for not only the kids, but the parents and the teachers. It's a snow day. I'm also concerned that if we do call it a remote day, and if it happens to be when we're back in school in hybrid session, if it's another cohort B week where we've already lost so much time, it's kind of unfair if it happens to be like remote B week when they've already only been in school for 3 days. I think taking a snow day, then it allows us to, kind of assess it and even those cohorts up at the end of the year if we have to, or into a term or whatever. I would propose that maybe we have 3 snow days, and then the last 2 or any days after that we could consider a remote day. But I feel like it's kind of sad to just take it away. I mean, I know that we're in a rhythm and that's kind of what we're doing, but I don't know, just my point of view with 3 remote kids at home that would really love a snow day.
Other questions, feedback? Mr. Gary.
Yeah, so I have a question about, if you call it a remote day, we have this hybrid model set up, so it won't be that disruptive. But what about the students that are in school, like the ELLs, the students, the SPED students? You give them advance notice to take the equipment home, but there's a reason why we have them in school in the first place where other kids are not. So how does that come into play?
They would have a remote day just like everybody else. So there would be remote lessons planned for that day for all students.
So they haven't been remote the whole time because they're in school the whole time. That, to me, would be disruptive for them.
They've been briefly.
They were a little bit.
remote.
Okay.
Briefly.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Hennessy.
Ms. Hennessy.
Allison wants to speak to.
Thank you. So I'm glad to say we already have a remote learning policy already in place. So that's a positive right there. That does support about the learning and the grading. I think it's a good idea so that we can keep on track. And to your point, we'll have to assess how the access is, because obviously we've all been in situations where there are pockets of the city that go out and other pockets that are completely fine. So I'm assuming that's just going to need to be you all assessing it like you would anyway from a snow day situation about what's going to be able to happen, and that one group would not necessarily get dinged with having a remote day if a portion of the population is without, that it probably would just be at that point a snow day, right? So that might help your cause. Just throwing it out there, that it might actually still happen, maybe. But I mean, I think it's a great idea from a standpoint, at least from preparation. I think it almost harkens towards the blizzard bag, you know, in preparation for whatever may happen so that we could be prepared. So I like the idea of the preparation. So thank you for bringing it forward. And I think, you know, that way at least the teachers have an idea for preparation. It would be interesting to understand whether it would be synchronous, asynchronous learning, and with students especially, you know, to your point, that have spent a lot of their time actually in the classroom, how they would be ready to make that transition to something different, so that the parents could also kind of be prepared for what that study may look like, because it seems like obviously it might be a little bit different from some of those, but sounds like a good idea. Thank you.
Ms. Matthews.
Mrs. Hennessy brings up a good point, though, that we're actually not talking about. We're talking about the kids being home. We currently have our educators coming to the buildings in most cases. A lot of the times the delay is because of getting our staff here and the busing situation and so on. So there may still be a need for you to either call a delay if the expectation is for staff to be here, and or because not all may be able to work remotely. And unless, you know, I mean, yes, we have a policy on remote, but that policy is with educators presumably in the building or with permission because they can. You know, you'd have to make that call, or administrators have to make that call, but it's not, I don't know if it's going to be that easy to make right off the bat.
We do it every snow day. So there's a general understanding that the buildings remain open unless it's generally a city of emergency or a state of emergency. And a lot of us are still at work on snow days.
No,
so.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. It may involve a delay of some kind as opposed to, I mean, instead of their days starting at 8 o'clock, there may be that still 2-hour delay before their first period starts because, you know, people can't dig out or whatever the case may be.
And we would work on that. There may be an issue where we could avoid a lot of that by allowing folks to be remote that day as well.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah, that was my question.
Right.
Was the expectation that teachers would still come to the school buildings on a snow day?
Generally
I mean,
not.
right.
Generally not, because the whole point would be is we were expecting inclement weather.
Right.
Administration generally still comes to work, custodians, office support, some other folks. We still go to the buildings unless it's one of those issues which I previously described, if like the mayor calls a city of emergency, the governor calls a state of emergency due to the weather. Other than that, we pretty much show up. But I'm sure we could work out those details to make sure that there's no delays.
Ms. Bodenhead.
Thank you. So, I mean, this is all predicated on the fact that we know at least a day or two in advance that snow is coming. That's not how it really works in New England. I mean,
it didn't work last Friday.
Exactly. This is not a foolproof. So, to Mrs. Ryan's hope, there's going to be snow days that we're not going to be able to prepare for.
It could very well happen.
Yeah.
I was caught off guard by the amount of snow we received on the 30th, or 29th. I can't remember which way it was.
Yeah, it's New England. So, I think Allison wanted to say something.
You want to say something?
Did you change your mind?
Go for it.
Allison, can
You
you
don't
use
have
the-
a microphone, though, so you might have to go up.
How come she doesn't have a microphone?
Ran out. Right there.
A microphone and
No, you can use this one.
Okay, I'm probably a bit biased because I'm a student. I'm also a senior, so obviously, like, I've been looking forward to snow days since I was a freshman, and but I think I kind of agree with Mrs. Ryan. Like, I think like she said, it's kind of a rite of passage having days off. And I think with all the stress going on, I mean, I know I'm super stressed right now. I have really hard classes. I'm taking AP and honors classes, so it's really difficult. It's nice to have a day off, even like they could just say it's a catch-up day and like we do makeup work or whatever, but I feel like even if they just gave us like a little bit of work and like we took a break from classes, I just feel like it would be beneficial to our mental health to have snow days, especially this year.
All right. Ms. Bodenhenge.
Thank you. So one question is, do you have to tell the state at some period, at some point in time, that this is what our plan is?
No, I don't think they're tracking it that closely.
Okay.
I think at the end of the year, they just want me to certify that we were in school for 170 days.
Okay. So the 170 days is based not adding any snow days into the schedule. You know, when we make the schedule, sometimes we build in the possibility of 3 snow days?
We always build in 5.
5.
Yep.
So do we still have those 5 built in?
Yep. No, that brings us to, I'm sorry, I have it in this folder. That would bring us to the 25th of June. So currently, we're on the 18th of June.
Okay, so when you said the 18th, that was the day not counting the built-in snow days. Okay. So it is possible that we don't have to decide right now.
Don't, we can leave it to the next meeting if you want to think about it and.
Well, I guess I'm just thinking if we make the decision now that that's how we're going to proceed, and it doesn't work so well the first time, we can recant.
I'm sure I'm sure you
Because
can.
it's not like we have to tell the state what we're doing.
I don't think they're asking for that level of detail.
Right. Okay.
Last words of the thing are, it's a local decision.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions, concerns from the committee? We're going to take a vote
Okay.
after I get a motion. Ms. Tennessee.
I'd like to make a motion to allow the superintendent to make a call relative to snow days or remote days as he sees fit.
A lot
Whoa, well,
of burden down there.
That's a wishy-washy motion.
He's the superintendent.
So I guess my question is for the committee, is that allowing me to call a remote day in advance if we see something nasty coming our way? That's one, I guess that's what I'm asking is, do I have the authority to do that?
Okay.
Is that what your motion is?
And that's what my
That's the
motion is.
motion
It's
made and
allowing.
seconded.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can't give me time.
Which one, so I can record it?
Superintendent, assistant superintendent, we're gonna go back to that other one.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're not ready yet. Slow down.
It's a snow day tonight, I think.
Okay. Ms. Hennessy.
How about this? I'd love to say congratulations to Nikki Fallon on her award before we go to some of the other stuff, because Nikki has put in a lot of time and effort behind the scenes, but really also out in front, making sure that things are getting done previous to this year, but also this year. So I personally have to say I'm quite appreciative of all of the effort that she's put in, doing almost anything to help all of the kids and the coaches and parents. So congratulations.
Thank you. Well deserved. Thank you.
So, on the issue at hand,
I have a quick question, I'm sorry, Mr. For the alphabetically illiterate like me, what does CMADA stand for?
I actually have no idea what CMADA stands for. I assure it's a Central Mass Athletic Directors Association.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Too many acronyms today.
Thank you, Mr.
So now on the issue at hand, we've had discussion about remote learning, hybrid learning. I threw out some ideas at the last meeting. Some of the emails I received were supportive. Some of the emails I received were not so supportive. And people are it's very interesting how they're pretty set in their ways on what they believe is the correct thing to do. And it really is almost a 50-50 division between parents. So it makes it even more difficult. I was fortunate enough to be on the PTO with Goodnow prior to this meeting, and it was interesting hearing from some of the parents, on some of the concerns they had. And luckily Amy was on there to straighten some of the answers out for me, because it got into classroom things, and, my feeling is we don't have to be in the classroom stuff and decisions there. But everyone has done such a great job. I mean, from the superintendent and his staff, our educators in the system, and I told all the parents and teachers that were on the line, we're all learning in this together, and there's going to be tweaks along the way. But I don't feel it much differently than I did even after the emails I received from both sides, and listening to different parents I've talked to, that for different reasons, for the reasons of consistency of learning, a better learning environment, more predictability for the parents that have to go to work, because some have to go to work, so giving them advance notice, and not worrying about going in and out. I believe that staying remote right now through actually January 11th. So it would get us through the Thanksgiving holiday. I don't believe for 1 minute that we're not going to be out sometime in December. Get through the Christmas holiday that goes right into New Year's. I don't believe that people aren't going to be getting together, and again, we're going to be hit right away. This gives them an extra week to stay home, and if symptoms come up, we can, the kids or the parents can stay home, and we can start clean on January 11th. Announce now that we're coming back to school with cohort A or cohort B based on what the superintendent says, but, it's the predictability thing, and it's the best place for kids to be is in the school. There's no question about it. But if they can't be in there 100%, I think being home 100% with their regular teacher is the best option. And, all of us, all the kids out there don't have the benefit of, having one parent home or two parents home. We have the boys club set up for the ones that need childcare during the day. They're taking around 80 kids.
And I believe they do have room.
So we do have some room left. We're helping our educators and our employees with our own daycare system. We're trying to do everything we possibly can. But that's my 2 cents, and obviously want to hear from everybody, so. Next. Ms. Bodenhinger.
I'm becoming more and more concerned about the social emotional piece the longer we stay out. I agree with you on pretty much every point, but I guess I need to hear more, and I think Mrs. Hennessy had some questions for you earlier today, about what we're doing to reach out to kids and families during this. What is guidance doing? What are we doing?
So I appreciate the question, and I just want to be honest. I did tell Ms. Hennessy, I can't discuss that tonight. because
Okay.
I got that question today.
Yeah, okay.
So I want to give you as much information as you can, but I need a little bit of advance warning.
Ms. Matthews?
I may come back. I may.
I just
I'll
Yep.
give you- I'll
No.
give you a second shot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Vigil. I agree. I've been struggling with this, getting the emails, both sides, I think, as many positive and negative. I had a conversation today with Ms. Hennessy, and one of the things that stuck out to me after we were done, I said, I thought about where were we in August, after we had spent 3 months of talking about what we were gonna do. And things were fairly good, and we made the decision, bravely made the decision, to go hybrid, when so many around us weren't even thinking about putting their kids into schools. Because we were afraid if we didn't get them in, we were never going to get them in. So we made the attempt, we got kids in. Within the first week, we started the ping pong game. And I think that's when I realized the ping pong is worse than the consistency. While I'd rather see them all in school, and I think for the teachers not knowing what cohort do I have, what lesson do I have, knowing each day I've got these 10, 20, whatever it is, kids in front of me, I think is more important. I agree the social emotional is critical. But I listened to what the governor said last week. I listened to it twice. And we had our virtual conference this weekend, and it was discussed in different things. Unfortunately, I don't think the state is being very helpful. They haven't from the beginning. They're telling us one thing, and then at the same time, oh, it's your decision. Well, we've worked very hard. Your staff have worked very hard, and while there are people on both sides of it, and some kids struggle, I get that. I think it's still better to give consistency from this point. I mean, hearing the governor opening up field hospitals today just made my skin crawl again, because all I'm thinking is, here we go. This is worse than March. This is, we all got very complacent. And here we are about to go into Thanksgiving. And I keep hearing all these people, oh, I'm having so many people over. I'm like, what? I realize we can't control it, and that's the thing, is that if we can't, we're not a bubble of 5,000 people. And each of those people goes out. I agree with the mayor. I think if we see a trending of decrease after the holidays, because we all know those numbers are gonna go up, I would be comfortable again going back to a hybrid. But I think obviously we're gonna have to have that conversation the week before to see, is it on, an uptick, or is it trending down? But I really think we need to try to give consistency. And I think, as Ms. Berry said, you've gotten into the routine now, finally. And it's not chaos. So. Sure.
I think, we were very fortunate at the beginning, starting hybrid, because we were able to build relationships. We had 2 weeks with each cohort, and I think that's huge for where we are right now with the remote. But I think too, we have built the routine, we're into a rhythm, but we're also learning, as we're teaching remotely, we're learning about how we can do hybrid differently. There are so many ideas just since Friday, when the governor made the announcement about, we have this relationship now with a full class, and we want to keep that going. So I think the more that we're able to stay consistent right now, I think I'm speaking for the teachers, I think just for our mental stability and our emotions, it's going to do a lot for when we are able to come back to hybrid. And I feel that ideas that have been bounced around the last few days for that return, because we all know it's at some point, and we really do want to return to the hybrid. But I think, as we're going on, we're building these ideas to make the hybrid situation better, especially for that group that's at home for the week, which we know, again, it's not ideal. We don't like not seeing them for a whole week. We do see them every day over the Zoom call, but it's just not the same. We all know that. So, I mean, that's something as teachers, we are constantly thinking about and building on to give them the continued stability that they're getting in this remote situation. Thanks.
Other questions from the committee? Ms. Ryan?
Well, I don't have a question. I just wanted to give my own point of view, but I think it's like everyone has stated, it's a very difficult decision, and I know personally my children are struggling with remote, and as much as I would love for them to go back to school, I have to think of all the children in the district, and I do think that the consistency is key right now, and the ping-ponging back and forth is not good for them, even for my own children. But I would like to ask the committee to hold off on making a vote until after public participation to see if we have any other comments from the public.
Okay. Other questions, comments from the committee? Ms. Hennessy?
Yeah, this has been almost as hard, if not harder, than when we had this discussion in August. I have to say that. Probably, at least for me, because of the state and the governor coming out with the new matrix. I felt like, even though I may have had some differences of opinion in regards to the metrics that we were using previously, it at least provided a standard that we were all trying to follow. And I feel like switching things out all of a sudden at the end of the week put all of us behind the 8 ball. And I don't mean us just here, all of us across the state. Mm-hmm. Every single educator, every single school committee member, every single superintendent, every single administrator, anywhere, we were just thrown out to some extent because what we were using as our standard wasn't going to be the standard anymore. So that, frankly, really threw me. And I think it throws all of us because it's a question mark, not just for the schools, not my area, but it affects our city, the decisions around businesses, restaurants, participation in activities, being a spectator at any kind of events. It just throws all of it out, once again, for a lot of discussion, thought. Not bad to have discussion, but tough discussion, and timing-wise, we're coming up on the holidays. So, just add salt to the wound by knowing that one of the reasons and ways that we've all been affected so far to date has been by gatherings. And that's how we're having, the passing, if you will, of the growth of our numbers anyway. And we're just saying, forget that we have holidays coming up where it's all about being with family and friends. And we're talking about the social emotional aspects, and we're saying, don't do it. It's such mixed on so many levels. Academically, it would be great to have everyone in person. But if you throw in a spice of all of these other things, I really struggle that trying to put kids and staff back into the schools right now for hybrid learning for what I'm going to say would be a 2-week period, and then we have Thanksgiving, to me seems ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. And yet I have heard so many, and I can see that the learning that can happen in person is great because it actually can meet so many kids' needs. I can see you, I can talk to you, I can interact with you, or I can write. it happens that all of our learning skills can be utilized where remotely that doesn't necessarily take place as well. But the consistency factor would not necessarily be there, and the ping pong effect, it doesn't work. And it's going to wreak even more havoc on the social emotional aspects. So while I 100% know that I threw you those questions today, that was really after a lot of ruminating about what Governor Baker threw out there and what was running through my mind, really weighing that information with what we're seeing from our community and our needs. And my struggle is then also seeing that the holiday time period is right there with Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, and Christmas and New Year's, boom, 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 and it's all about family. I mean, it is. It's all about somehow wanting to connect with other people. My hope would be that actually, just like I said to my parents and my family, I can't see you. We each have to make sacrifices for the betterment of humankind and of each other. And I know that may sound just crazy to some, but that's what we all have to do, and we have to understand that. So I hope we can address some of the social emotional aspects and take great strides, that if we are going to necessarily keep the students remote until January, that we make huge strides to get connections going, just like the young girl, I think it was Risha. Yeah, Risha was saying, the freshman, about not really knowing how to connect through clubs and not really knowing how to connect with someone about all of this additional workload that she has on her plate. Because if we can't help to figure those things out, then we are going to cause even more problems with this decision than anything. So there's my 20 minutes, sorry.
You had something else, Allison? Before Allison, as she goes over there, I just wanted to throw out, first of all, I believe we did the right thing in starting the kids off with the hybrid. It got the kids in there, it met their teachers. We had kids that had no idea who their teachers were. And I also want to let everyone know, we have 59 cases in the city. So it's not like there's cases all over the place. That number's going to stay pretty stagnant for a while, up and down 10 or 15. So that's the other point. The third point is changing the metrics is great because you have no measurement period. It's kind of like the MCAS and SATs and everything else. If you change them every 2 years, there's never a measurement stick. So I'm pretty comfortable with where I am on this decision because of looking at that. Allison.
I feel like everyone pretty much covered all the bases, but I just wanted to kind of provide the student standpoint. I think we should stay remote just because people keep saying the word consistency, and honestly, like, I feel so much better knowing that every day is the same, and like I know which classes I have at which times, and I feel like when we go back and forth, it's just really mentally draining, and you just, like, you're excited to go back to school, but you have no idea how long you're going to be there. And I think with flu season coming up, we're not going to be able to distinguish between the flu and COVID, or it's going to be really hard anyways. So I just think, like, a lot of my teachers have said it's easier for them to teach over Zoom. Just, I think overall it's better.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Gary?
I'll put my 2 cents in, I guess. I do have a question, but which I'll work in, I promise. There's a reason that all the feedback we get, emails and parents or teachers or whatever, communicating to us, is a reason why it's 50-50. Because both sides stink for the other side. No matter which way you go, the other half is not, their needs aren't met. So it is difficult in general, and people really need to understand that, especially each half. of the people that have. We as a body have to look at the whole, which is really difficult because the whole doesn't have the same needs. But my question that I wanted to the superintendent is, I know that the state has the new way that they figure out, you know, how that, I know it's brand new. Do you have any comfort level as to how that's coming about? Like, have you sort of got your head around it yet for that? And two, A and two, B, the other one, how does that affect, let's say we send them back to school and then we're gonna ping pong again and we send them back home because of the data. How does this new way of conveying the data from the state affect your thoughts on whether to stay in school or not? And if you don't have comfortability with it, then the second part is kind of moot.
So I think the first question is, we've had some opportunity over the weekend to look at the metric and try to understand it a little bit better. The first thing is they've changed the one metric they were using before was the average cases per 100,000 residents. And they were saying that anything above 8 per 100,000 would be a high-risk category. So the way that they've changed the metric now is to say that to be in a high-risk category in a city our size, you have to be above 10 cases per 100,000, which is a slight change. That doesn't make me uncomfortable. The second is that you have to have a above 5% positivity rate. That makes me slightly uncomfortable because above a 5% positivity rate, to me, would mean that there would be significant non-pharmaceutical interventions that need to happen in the city. So if you are above a 5% positivity rate, those are many other things that are happening outside the scope of the school committee that would have to probably be looked at. So having a bar, changing the bar from where it was to now there, I think there is very little chance that many of the districts are going to be in the former red category, if that makes sense.
Right.
So my comfort level with it is low because we just got it and we're trying to feel it out. And more anything else, we went from 121 communities that were high risk to 19. That tells me everything I need to know in some ways, because if you're saying you're high risk on one day and you're not high risk the next day, that can lead to some issues with us trying to figure out where's the credible source of information. It's difficult. And I think the state has given us all of these data points, and we as a local community now have to figure out how do we use these data sources to make the right decisions. That's a difficult piece that we are dealing with. When I look at our data, we are going to solidly be in the yellow category from here on out. Mm-hmm. I don't foresee us going red. I don't foresee us going green. I think we're going to be solidly yellow. What we were told in the press conference was that potentially we should be fully back in person right now. And I'm going to tell you that is next to impossible. They have not removed the restrictions on busing, so I couldn't bring all the kids back because we only can put 25 kids on a bus. That doesn't remove the restrictions on the distancing between the students, which frankly has been successful in some ways. So when you add up all these things, am I really comfortable with it? Not yet. Not yet. I think there's, as the mayor said, when you kind of move the goalposts, everyone is now playing a different game. And I think we have to understand what this is going to mean moving forward, and then what conditions do we have to satisfy to be in and out of these different categories. And having it be 10 per 100,000 and 5% is difficult for me because that 5% number is really high compared to historically where we have been. Most of the summer we were in the low ones. We were above 2s at some point. Right now we're about 3.5. To get to 5 is difficult, I think. And that's where I'm trying to figure out, was the map on to lower the amount of communities in risk, or was this to reflect more what's happening across the nation? And that's what I'm struggling with, just to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I think last time too, we had those couple of different versions of metrics that we were looking at that had all kinds of different levels. Anyway, one group had 8, or another one was like at 19 or something. It was all over the place anyway.
Yep.
And this is now yet another
Yep.
thing.
And we looked, yes, and that brings up a good point, Mr. Gary. I mean, we did look at the different metrics, for example, in the, like the Harvard Public Health Report, we would be orange, which isn't even a color in the other ones, but I'm just like, I understand that this can be frustrating for everybody because there's so many different sources. So if you look at the Harvard Public Health Report, we would be in the orange because we're between 10 and 25 cases. If you look at the CDC report, I believe we are light green as opposed to being yellow. So if you look at every different report, there's significant kind of differences in what the recommended non-pharmaceutical interventions, the NPIs, that's really what they're telling us to do. And I think part of what, if I'm hearing the mayor, and he can tell me if I'm wrong, where we are right now is where we're going to be. And we also know, just putting it out there, coming up in the holidays, that there could be potential spikes during the holiday 2 weeks afterwards. Knowing that, and knowing that how that has an effect on the schools, because we have experience now, you're going to have kids in, you're going to pull them out and have to quarantine them, and that's going to be a consistent problem over the next 60 days.
Other question, Ms. Hennessy?
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Crusoe?
Well, talking about the press conference, I found it really interesting that they're putting the kids back in school, but they're still closing concert halls and bar rooms. So that's kind of a mixed message. It's just been one of those deals where I'm not sure how many sides of the mouth they can speak out of because they've tried them all at this point, I think. I also think part of what they're doing it with this new method is that they're mad at some school systems more than others. And I think this is a way for them to be a little bit more pushy. I think we may be caught in a crossfire of a little bit of a power play between some school systems on the, that's just my natural teacher's distrust of DESE coming in. I understand that, but that's one of the way I'm looking at what happened on Friday. The two things I had the hardest time explaining when I spoke to parents was, they say, we only got 4 kids. There's no big issue in the schools. Why can't they all be back there? And I have to keep reminding them, it's not the 4 kids, it's what happens outside of the 4 kids. It's where the 4 kids go. It's what happens when those 4 kids are out. Who goes out with them? What teachers go out with them? Where they go? Who's around? There's all those complicated mathematics that don't just talk about the 4 students that are not in the building at the time. There are other things that happen that are not under our control at that point either, in a lot of ways. I also found the word consistency to be interesting because consistently, on both sides of the issue, people use the word consistency when they explain why we should do what we're doing. And I think we've been pretty consistent in the way we've looked at things here in terms of our constantly taking all the information we get. And also we've got a lot of advice that we should look at other school systems and other states and other cities and sort of thing. And unfortunately, that's not what we were told at the beginning. We're supposed to be using local data and local information. We've done that quite well. We've used our local data and done it quite well. And I don't know why we would, suddenly start changing some of the stuff we've done that's worked for us so well. So I think we're, again, as in everything, if you've got 50% of the people that don't like you and 50% that do, you've got to be doing something somewhat right. And I think we're doing that. I appreciate and understand everything that the parents have said on both sides of the issue. As a teacher, I fully understand the concept of having the student in front of you, because as a music teacher, I had kids pulled away from me all the time for all kinds of reasons, so I didn't often see my students for most of a term. I understand that. Believe me, I've seen the way that works. But I also know what it's like not to have the student there at all because they're unable to come to school. So I understand that side of it too. So I just think that we need to stay as consistent as we've been. And I think that's what we're trying to do tonight. And I just think that we've been doing the best we can what we have, and I think to have another ripple thrown into the pond by the Department of Education and the government at this point just isn't helping anybody.
Anyone else? Ms. Hennessy.
Thank you. So, not expecting you to be able to necessarily answer this tonight, Superintendent Bergeron, but if we could get an understanding of how things are going from an attendance standpoint across the board, but really have an understanding, general breakdowns, elementary, middle school, and high school, I think it would be helpful to understand how our participation in attendance is really going at those levels. We did have at least some type of a benchmark from last spring. I think it would be helpful to get another benchmark to understand where things are currently, so that we can again grab those data points to try and help on our decisions. And trying to understand about the remote requests. So obviously we're remote right now, but I believe you had mentioned at our last meeting, when we get to the end of the first semester, trimester, whatever it is, that there was going to be the opportunity for parents to voice, you know, what they're interested in. I guess I'm just wondering, is that something that in anticipation of potentially going back to hybrid learning, would you as parents want to be remote, or would you consider hybrid? I feel like with some of the communications that we have received from families that are voicing concern about bouncing back and forth, it seems like some may be looking for that consistency of just doing remote learning only, which I think would probably also affect your staffing needs, which I think then would also reflect a discussion that we might need to have around budget. So I guess that's a question I have for down the road on continuing this discussion. And then third point that I would love for us to talk about again at some point would be about the quarantining. I know that we had established a pretty conservative approach relative to our quarantining needs, which obviously then has a domino effect also about staffing and effects at home learning. And this is all relative towards if we bring students back in for hybrid. I have heard some discussions of other districts, and I'm not sure if you might have more exposure to this, or maybe Ms. Bodenhediger or Ms. Matthews through like Division 4, maybe it's a conversation where we could get feedback from other people in our division. Are any school districts utilizing, say, the free testing facilities available to provide, say, 2 negative tests, and then they are provided the ability to come back into school as opposed to waiting a 14-day period? So I'm curious about that, only because I think that might also help in some cases too, for again, down the road if we were looking at having people in. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about that as a yardstick.
I'll be happy to address the attendance. I can tell you right now, we have looked at that. Attendance is up across the board, much better than it was in the spring. I'll bring solid numbers to the next meeting, but I can tell you at the elementaries, it's in the high 90s. At the middle school, it's in the 90s, and at the high school, it's in the 80s, as far as attendance every day, which was significantly better than what we saw in the spring during the remote period.
Okay, that's great. Thank you to have that information.
Anyone else? Ms. Bodenhediger.
Yeah, I'll just express my frustration with the state and the moving of the goalposts. I think this new set of metrics are more in line with the CDC's metrics from the start, and it makes me feel like the initial set of metrics that we were forced to operate under were really unrealistic to begin with. I think this is probably a more realistic set of metrics, but you can't go backwards from the mentality that we've all been operating under. And it's really frustrating. They did address in that conference around testing, and they are dispatching testing for districts that have a high concentration of cases within their district. and it's only for symptomatic folks. So it doesn't look like the state's really going to be helping out very much. And my other frustration with all of this is just where this is headed is going to really undermine the equity issues statewide, because if you look at the 19 districts, they are every single one of the gateway districts, and then a couple outlier, really super small districts that probably had like one family of 6 people that had it, and it threw the whole numbers off, right? But it's all those low, high poverty, urban districts that are just gonna suffer in the long run at a time when, we pushed the legislature to change the funding formula and to really, turn things around to be able to support districts that really needed it, and then this all hit, and that all went out the window. So it's really frustrating to look at it from an equity standpoint statewide. But back to us here in Marlborough, the more, wearing my social worker hat, I'm always concerned about the social emotional piece to begin with. And I really feel like the ping-ponging back and forth contributes to the social emotional piece. And I think, Allison, you kind of really pointed to that, as did Mrs. Berry. So, yeah, I think if we do vote to stay out through, January, I think it probably does make the most sense, but I really think we need to be checking ourselves and making sure we're doing everything we can to reach out to the kids. And also, I'd like some information on what we're doing to get them physically moving, so they're not just sitting in front of a screen all day long.
Anyone else? Yeah? Not right now, but we will.
You mean tonight or in the future? So they haven't released some of the metrics from the MIA that they're going to use for health and safety. So I think it's a discussion probably at the next meeting. Okay. But before the season starts.
Mrs. Hennessy might want to speak to that.
Sorry,
Ms. Hennessy, I apologize.
That's okay.
Throw it over to you.
It's okay. I just wanted to add in only because I actually am going to be in the hot seat, Allison, fairly soon, hearing about that. So the MIA Sports Medicine group is supposed to meet next Monday, the 16th, with the 17th also reserved as a follow-up meeting. And we're supposed to be discussing winter sports. What that's going to be and how it's going to be on the agenda, I cannot tell you. My guess is that there will be comments or modifications potentially that would be given to Sports Med to review from each of the potential winter sports. That's similar to the process of what happened when we discussed for Fall 1, Fall 2, what was potentially going to get pushed out. So I had given Mr. Bergeron a heads up that I believe what will happen will be the proposed winter sports modifications would come to Sports Med, which is honestly made up of a huge amount of people that are all very smart at making those decisions. Epidemiologists and doctors all over from Massachusetts' top hospitals, athletic trainers, athletic directors, and I'm just kind of the lowly school committee person that gets to sit there and kind of listen in and throw a perspective in every once in a while. But my anticipation would be that it would happen on those 2 days. And then, as I said to Mr. Bergeron, probably that could be something that we could discuss here at the 24th?
24th,
right?
is the next meeting.
So,
More to come.
okay.
Now, Assistant Superintendent's report?
Yes. Good
We
idea.
talk about things on the agenda. We're gonna
Yes.
talk about future meetings now.
Good evening. Last month, I provided initial information regarding the 2020-2021 MCAS schedule, and on October 27th, the state updated that information. MCAS assessments will be scheduled from January 14th to February 5th for students in the class of 2021 and 2022. As of today, Marlborough High School is tentatively planning for eligible students to participate in these sessions. And as of today, we have no information on any remote option, so just putting that out there. Additionally, the Access for ELS test will be administered for all EL students in grades K through 12 between January 7th and February 25th. So it's an overlapping window. The NWA MAP growth testing has been completed in grades 1 through 12, even remotely. Principals, coordinators, and supervisors have been working with teachers to use this data in planning, in lesson planning and instruction. And we're also looking at the next cycle of that assessment and using that data because we are posting for our remote extended day programs as well. On November 3rd, all Marlborough teachers, paraeducators, behavior technicians, office support, and administrators participated in the scheduled professional development day. In September, we launched a district-wide committee focused on anti-bias and anti-racism. This district-wide committee's draft goal states, Marlborough Public Schools is committed to eliminating biases and racism in our environment and to supporting each other in understanding and dismantling our personal biases and privilege to deliver an inclusive education to our students. We aim to create safe, supportive learning communities that routinely look for, actively dismantle, and work to reverse any inequities that exist. We believe our committee and this work will require a multi-year commitment. Karen Nowak, Jody Reyes, Lynn Medallion, and Rupal Patel are co-chairing, co-leading this committee. The district-wide anti-bias, anti-racism committee includes over 35 educators. These educators represent all 7 Marlborough schools. Our goal for November 3rd was to create a common experience for every staff member as we launched this district-wide commitment and as we begin a conversation defining racism, bias, and privilege in Marlborough Public Schools. I also included just an overall agenda for you for your reference as well. Any questions?
Questions from the committee? Senesi.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
First of all, I'll start with the Professional Development Day. I'm really, really proud of the district for going ahead and putting that subject up front for a discussion. And thank you to you for sending your piece to us to view. I really appreciated all of the thought and time and effort that went into that. It's a tough discussion, and it's a tough thing to have to actually just put out there. But if we don't go ahead and put it out there, it gets brushed aside. So thank you. It's important. And then second, about my favorite topic of MCAS. So I did ask this question earlier, and then it was so much more poignant with having the John and Abigail Adams scholars named today, which was great. But I'm curious as to how this is all going to come down with these now juniors that didn't have the opportunity to take it in 10th grade. And now potentially they're going to be taking it sometime then in January or February.
So the January assessment will be the legacy standards. And so that means that it's the older version of the MCAS, even though it is going to be online. So generally, that assessment is thought of as being slightly easier than the next gen. Therefore, if we have that opportunity of that window, we're going to take advantage of it.
Okay. I will hold my comment other than, once again, DESE in our state is truly not helping any of us right now at this point to be focusing in on the MCAS. But thank you for the information.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Mr. Bergeron.
Just want to say bravo to the staff for getting NWEA MAP fully tested throughout the system, including our remote students. Unbelievable, fantastic. I thank every single one of them for working that hard to get MAP testing done. And that's going to be incredibly helpful to us as we look at our next steps and how we're going to, if we see any gaps, how we're going to attack them and how we're going to get our kids where they need to be. So bravo to the staff. Fantastic job getting that done.
Mr. Diaz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is tonight's update from Finance and Operations. In food services, we've made a couple of notable changes. Students attending school in person are now taking breakfast home at the end of their academic day for consumption before school the following morning. Afternoon kindergarten students are taking lunch home at the end of their academic day, also so they can consume it before school the following day. Both of these changes were made so that we could minimize the amount of time folks were not wearing masks within a confined space. Just want to continue to remind the community that the food service program is still making meals available to families at community-wide bus stops. We will continue this model of distribution until the buses are needed to transport students to Whitcomb and Marlborough High. The success of this program relies on the participation of families, and we encourage all remote learners to come out and grab meals from a nearby bus stop. I just continue to make these reminders because I see that our numbers continue to trickle up, so I don't think we've hit maximum participation yet, and these numbers are very helpful. Facilities. On November 4th, the district updated its website with new HVAC reports for Marlborough High, Jarrick, Richer, Goodnow, ECC, and Hildreth. These reports are available on the district's website. Updated reports for Kane and Whitcomb are forthcoming and will be also posted publicly as soon as they are completed. And we always share the reports with our MEA as soon as they come out. Draft budget schedule for the FY22 budget. Superintendent's leadership team proposed the following FY22 budget calendar. On February 9th, we will hand you the budget book for your review. On Wednesday, February 24th, we will hold our now usual 6 p.m. budget workshop. On March 9th, the school committee would not vote on, but actually agree on the number to be voted during that meeting. On the 23rd, we would then have a public hearing on the school committee's FY22 budget, and then we will take a vote on that date. And on April 1st, the budget would go to the mayor and the city council. Happy to take your feedback and comments on that proposed schedule.
Questions from the committee? Mrs. Matthews.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz, on the handing out breakfast, and does that seem to be working so far? I mean, you've had a couple of weeks of that.
It's working well.
Yeah.
That's going well, yes. Thank you.
And just a side note, I had seen some comments made that the menus weren't being updated for all the buildings and for the remote, or for, the drop-off ones. And so I actually did go on and looked, and there are still some October menus out there and not all, so maybe if you could.
That is absolutely true. We are honestly struggling a little bit with the logistics around having so many in-person students and then different sites for production. We are working on having more consistency with the menu so that we can provide that information in advance to the parents.
Okay.
Thank you for
Okay,
the
well,
feedback.
that's good to know. That way,
Yes,
it can be communicated that way, that's why it hasn't been updated.
I have received that feedback from parents as well.
Okay, perfect, great.
Anyone else? Mr.
Thank you.
Caruso.
Yeah, Mr. Diaz, just a question about the sending the breakfast home. Is that a change from what we've been doing with the kindergarten kids?
That is, we were having breakfast in the classrooms, at the elementary schools. So we've changed that so that we can send the breakfast home at the end of the school day so that the students can have it at home before they come to school. And for the PM kindergartners, when they were coming into school, we were giving them lunch. We changed that so that they take a lunch home at the end of the day, and they can eat the lunch at home before coming in for their PM kindergarten shift.
I mean, it's just a concern about the ability to hold off eating food by some kids. Just, because breakfast is important to have at breakfast time, and I was just concerned that we're going to giving them something that they would not be eating at breakfast and being ready for the next day, but having the day before. But
No, we share in some of that concern, and all of our principals, all of our staff are very well aware that if there is any evidence that a student is hungry, that we will provide them a meal.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And this is about busing. This came up because I saw this on the news. The weather's changing. Obviously, snow is coming. We are riding with bus with the windows down, I think, at this point. What's going to happen in the wintertime when this may become an issue?
We
Hats
will.
and gloves.
Oh. Yes, thank you.
I have a song about that I could teach all the kids.
We will continue to have the windows open unless the weather outside is bad enough that it's not possible. So my ask for the families at home is to make sure the students do bundle up before coming to school. And if I may, in addition, we have taken extreme steps. The facilities department has worked very hard to make sure that we bring in the maximum amount possible of outside air into the schools. So this winter, our schools will be a little bit cooler than usual as well. And again, so that would be critically important to bundle up this winter.
Yeah, the other question would have been on the buildings. Are we going to have open windows in buildings that have opening windows? Or is that being done all through internal systems?
Most of our schools handle that internally through the HVAC.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? My goal this year is to get our 2022 budget done before the legislature gets their 2020 budget done.
It may not be very hard, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
We accept.
Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of October 27th.
Motion to approve with amended. I have to apologize to Miss Lucas because we spelt her name wrong, and I will correct that. And thank you, Ms. Ryan, for pointing that out. Otherwise, motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another time for public participation. The school committee will hold this meeting virtually with members attending in person and/or remotely. Public attendance will not be permitted. For the public participation portion of this meeting, members of the public may provide comment by emailing the superintendent at superintendent@mps-edu.org before 4 p.m. on the above date, or dialing 774-243-0611, conference ID 131666-267. I think, Mr. Diaz, I think that's the wrong slide. That's okay. I'll read that phone number again. It's 774-243-0611. The conference ID is 131666-267 #. Again, public participation is not a question and answer session with the committee, but an opportunity for you to give your public comment at this time. Mr. Diaz, do we have anybody waiting to give a public comment?
Superintendent, we actually have a phone number that's been in since the beginning of the meeting. Okay. I just want to acknowledge the phone number for 1 second. Phone number ending 9423. If you could please unmute yourself by pressing *6, and please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I think it's me. It's Marnie Farrell, the cell phone number 9423. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Marnie. Can you just state your address for the record for the school committee and then provide your comment? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Marnie Farrell. I'm in Marlborough, Mass. Thank you very much for all of your hard work. I can't even imagine being a teacher during this time. Quite impossible, I can imagine. I love that the students came forward and spoke and represented a lot of the thoughts of their fellow students I thought that was great information and feedback for the committee to hear firsthand. I think it is important to continue to do that as often as possible and check in with the students, with the teachers, as many as possible, and to really get honest and quantified feedback in everything that's going on. I think things change quickly and on a weekly basis, as you full well know, just with all the, the metrics coming out and any new guidance from the CDC and all the other organizations that you're dealing with on a daily basis. So it's definitely important to keep checking in, but not necessarily just from one or two people making statements, but from a group of people and a good group of people. So it's quantified. So just to make a general comment, I agree with lots of points that were brought up this evening, and especially there was a lot of time put into the game plan for our district for this school year and how it was going to work with the pandemic, the hybrid approach, and also the importance of getting these kids and keeping these kids in the classroom. I think 100% of us agree that that is the most important thing, is to get the kids in the classroom, and that is the most effective way to teach these kids. We have a great district, we have great students, great teachers in the district, and I think we should all hold ourselves to a pretty high standard, and that should continue. I heard a lot tonight, consistency, and after speaking directly with a couple teachers, I think that's their main concern, is the flip-flopping and not knowing what to do the following week, et cetera, and that must be impossible. I can't imagine being at a job like that where you're just not going to know where you are, what to expect, if your kids are going to be in the classroom, where they're going to be, if you're going to have the right technology, if you're going to have internet access, if it's going to work, et cetera. So I think that is key, and consistency is important. But I think consistency can also be being consistent in the hybrid model, and that can be our consistent way to have these kids in school. And I think that's okay too. I think we've almost become a little complacent, and it's easy just to kind of stick with this remote. And I just don't want to, I think, settle and have that be our mindset, that it's just easier. I think we've really, my fear is that we're going to get to January 11th and that we're going to just be complacent with this and forget everything that we might have talked about or that was discussed over the summer and what we've always known about getting these kids to the classroom. So that's just always got to be at the forefront of how we're thinking, is to get these kids back to the classroom as quickly as possible. And maybe it's not just totally shutting down everything. Maybe it's just easing on a few of our restrictions. I think we tend to be a little more conservative. And knowing that when we put it out there to the families in the district, it was their decision to send their kids to school hybrid and take on the responsibility of that. I think we try to be maybe pleasers to everybody and take care of absolutely everybody, and that's just such a tall, almost unreasonable order. Some of that responsibility can fall on the families of Marlborough. If you're, electing to go hybrid, I know the responsibilities that come with that with sending my kid to school. I also know the responsibilities I have at home in keeping my kids safe, and that knowing what my kids can and can't be around in order to be able to continue to go to school. So, I think some of that responsibility can be put back on the parents as well. So, just kind of want to always know that that should just be the mentality that we have, and work to get to that goal of getting them back to the classroom, even 100%. And if it is, in fact, 50% of the people that you're hearing from, is a true 50-50 split, that sounds like, that's your numbers right there. Well, 50% are truly for being online at this time, and 50% are for being in the classroom. then that's almost your your numbers right there. You might be able to plan for it that way, and that solves kind of part of the problem. I think with the CDC and some other organizations have come out with facts about this virus is not being transmitted. It's not the in-classroom transmissions. That's not where these kids are transmitting the virus. That's not where it's happening. So if it's happening outside of school, maybe looking into the testing, that might be an opportunity or some solution to look into. I know there's another school district that's looking into it. It's a privately sourced testing, and maybe there's something with that can be looked into. I know there's definitely a cost involved, which I think I've talked about before, but there's lots of different ways around that. I know there's a lot of grants that are out there that can potentially be sought out, and also some families might be willing to pay that price or a portion of it at least to reduce the cost, and even do some fundraising for it. So there's kind of some creative ideas around that as well. So I guess that's it. I do really honestly appreciate all of your time and effort, and just especially with the teachers. I think at some point too, to really, if you haven't done it, I know some of you do have kids in the district. I really do think that it would be beneficial to sit through a day of remote learning and just see what really these kids are up for. Just to not to criticize it or anything like that, but just to learn more about it. It was brought up, the teachers have learned a lot so far about how it can work and can work better. That is fantastic. That's exactly what should be doing now. And the attendance is up, like Superintendent said, as far as the kids. But just making that situation the absolute best it can be, and even to add to the hybrid, when it gets back to that, that's just so important to learn from all of this. But I think a day to experience a day of remote learning from the student's perspective and from the teacher's perspective as soon as possible, I think that information is critical to learn more about how we can be more helpful and what we really need to do as a district to make the academic experience for our students the absolute best it can be, and not get to next May and have a whole year for these students just a total wash. I think as a district, I know we can do better with that, with all of the resources that we have and all of the hardworking people that are on the same page with this. So thank you very much for your time, and have a great night.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell.
Mr. Superintendent, we have 2 additional callers. I'll let them one at a time.
Yes, thank you.
Phone number ending 8528. If you could please state your name and address for the record. Phone number ending 8528. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
You may need to, if your phone number is 8528, you may need to unmute yourself by dialing *6. And then if you may, can you please give us your name and your address before your public comment? Thank you. All right. Mr. Diaz, why don't we move on to the next caller? Whoop, unless that person's ready.
I'm letting the next caller in. Phone number ending 8975. If you could hear us, please dial *6 to unmute yourself, and kindly tell us your name and address for the record.
It just muted me again.
Yep, you're unmuted. If you could just give us your name and your address for the public comment, thank you so much.
Mr. Bergeron, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Excellent. This is Allison Conlin. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who is there for all that you do, and that I definitely agree with Mr. Caruso and the committee that MPS as a team has really, really done well with everything that we have set out to do this year. I am a parent and I'm also a teacher. A couple of different points that I wanted to raise from the discussions tonight that I think were important and just kind of needed to be repeated. One of them is this difference in the metrics from the state and the idea of what is safe. The fact that it keeps changing, to me, gives evidence to the fact that we still don't know this disease. We're still learning all of the pieces, how it's transmitted, what's safe, what isn't safe. I look at all of the changes, and I know that it's disconcerting to not be able to have anything consistent there that we can definitely rely on for data. I'm a math teacher. I like the data. I know that mental health was brought up as a really big challenge, and I agree. I teach at the middle school, and mental health is definitely on our radar on a regular basis. I think for us, one of the biggest challenges that we have faced is getting the students to ask for that help. We have help available. There's a teacher available to every single student, either in the hybrid model or in our remote model, from 8 o'clock in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon, with the exception of a half an hour at lunchtime. And even then, most of the teachers, if there's a student that's asking, the teachers will stay with that student for that lunch period. With our current model, I have found our attendance rate is exceptionally high. I would say that our attendance in remote is higher than what I normally would have had when we were, in 2018 and 2019, pre-COVID. The kids are attending to classes. They are coming in. They're looking for that connection as well. They're looking for the consistency. I think in general, for teachers, being able to know what's coming, not only just for next week, we're all still learning, but the consistency of the lessons and the planning for the teachers, knowing a date and how long and what our thought and our plans are, definitely helps us. The kids need the routine, and that routine provides accountability. And for the students, having that accountability is there because of the consistency that we have created. We've been at this a little bit while, and now we've got the kids that are finally saying, oh, that's right, I definitely need to do this. It's not going to change. We can hold them accountable for what they need to do because it hasn't changed. It's the same rules. In hybrid, we do get to meet with the students each day, but I don't think that you can compare a class of 44 in a hybrid class with me for math to a class of 21. It's not the same interactions. It's not the same relationships. Being remote allows us to see their actual faces. We get the visual cues of how they're doing without the face mask covering them up. We get to see if they're following along with what we're doing. I think that the ping pong effect is going to be huge over the next couple weeks as we have students who individually need the quarantine. We've got students who might be exposed through a parent, and for them to be out of school for 14 days, now they're in that sort of no man's land of they're absent from school, but their cohort's in school, so what are they doing? And trying to provide a stable and consistent education for them is a real challenge. I know that as we're looking at coming back, the current order for inside gatherings, if we're in a private setting, is 10. So why is my Thanksgiving being cut for the number of people that I get to spend my Thanksgiving with, but yet in school we get to have 25 students just because it's a public space? I don't think that the students are, and in some cases the parents, I think that there's a real struggle with the idea of giving something else up in 2020. I think that many people want that. They want that connection. They've missed that connection, and the confusion from the state that's created by these changing metrics and what we can have and what we can't have is definitely a challenge. So I guess in conclusion, my big point, what I'd really like to say is that I think right now that from my perspective as a teacher, my perspective as a parent, that this remote thing is really working, and it's working better than what the hybrid situation was doing. And we're getting better at it, and we're learning more. And I think that with everything that's coming with the holidays, that I think it would be better if we put off and set a date of coming back later in January. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Conlon. Mr. Diaz, is there anybody else in the queue?
We have one additional caller.
Thank you.
Let them in. Phone number ending 8528. If you could please dial *6 to unmute yourself, and please state your name and address for the record. Caller with the phone number ending 8528. If you could please click *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Thank you.
My name is Laura Fullerton, and I live at 12 Holly Hill Lane.
Thank you, Ms. Fullerton. And your comment for the committee?
I actually was wondering if I could get some clarification from yourself, Mr. Superintendent, as to what was the original reasoning as to why specifically K-2 was singled out for full-time learning when the original DESE guidelines specified that all of pre-K through 5 should be, prioritized along with ELL learners, kids that were significantly behind, et cetera, in their original recommendations, and why, if it is so dangerous for our children to be in schools where you guys don't want to bring the other grades back, even in a hybrid model, why is it that you guys can justify continuing to keep those kids in at a full-time basis and not bring back any of the other children at any of the other grades or any of the other elementary school levels?
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Fullerton. Mr. Diaz, is there anybody else in the queue?
There are no additional callers at this time.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I did also have an additional email. I'll send it to the committee so you can read it. It was a very well-written statement from the boys ice hockey team, just talking about their desire to have a season. I'll send it to the committee so you can read it. I won't read it into the record tonight, but a very well-written statement from the boys hockey team about why this season is important to them. And I'll send that over to the committee.
Thank you. FY21 operating budget transfers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few transfers for the committee to consider tonight, starting at Kane Elementary, where we're requesting $1,500, in which we're utilizing efficiencies in the history instructional material line to offset overages on the ELA instructional material line. At Whitcomb, requesting a transfer of $15,500, utilizing efficiencies in the night custodian line to offset custodial OT costs, as well as utilizing the salary reserve line to offset long-term sub costs in English, as well as the technology teacher lines. At Marlborough High, a transfer of $43,344, utilizing salary reserve account to offset costs for 3 long-term substitutes in ELA, math, and history, as well as an overage in the BT line, a science teacher line that was onboarded slightly at a higher rate than what we had budgeted for, a change in the professional growth stipend for assistant principal, and clerical OT costs. Also utilizing efficiencies in the night custodian lines to offset custodian OT costs. District-wide, a transfer of $158,576, one of which $147,000 worth is just correcting a budget line in which we put a teacher in a coordinator line, so we're correcting that. Also utilizing salary reserve line to support a curriculum coordinator stipend, as well as costs associated with the COVID-19 community outreach efforts and an overage in the HR contracted services costs. If I may, I just want to comment, if you looked at the October budget report, there were some additional lines that were over. Those will be corrected once we make transfers from the operating accounts to federal budget, federal grant accounts, as well as the circuit breaker account. So by the time you see the November report, all of those will be eliminated.
Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Mrs. Matthews.
Quick question. The district-wide music coordinator, was that a position we added? I didn't think we had a coordinator position.
If I may, Mike?
Good.
So what we did here is there were two positions that shared between 4 elementary schools. We had one account that we wanted to put them in. I put them into a coordinator account. I'm correcting that to put them into a teacher account, which is what the request is tonight. Thank you.
Any other questions? On the motion to approve, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you tonight, the Marlborough Educator Association and the Negotiations Subcommittee worked to create a memorandum of agreement on the remote work environment. The Negotiations Subcommittee and the MEA have both come to an agreement, so I bring it forward tonight for the committee to ratify.
Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, I also bring in front of you my goals for FY21. I brought them at the last meeting, and I am asking for the committee to approve my FY21 goals unless there are any friendly amendments you wish to make.
Ms. Matthews.
I will make a motion to approve, and go to discussion, I guess.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Further discussion. Ms. Matthews.
So in looking over your goals, I know we clarified the developing of the digital library of content and not getting rid of, and I agree with that. I think you have the foundation now of many things and obviously can be expanded. In that regard, and the communication role increase, I feel like we need some more work on our website again. I think we've kind of ignored it a little bit because we've been obviously prioritizing, which is fine, but I think a lot of parents, and I know I still go to it to look for information, and I don't think it's as up-to-date as it could be. So that may be something we talk about in the budget too, because I think that's where people go for information. Your second goal of being present in the schools, that's a tough one. You know, I mean, while I'm sure just as we want our kids there, I think that's a hard one for you to meet. But obviously, you're going to have to make the accommodations to provide that to your administrators. And I like we talked about last year, in that having the common walkthrough guides, I think, is great for you with them as well as for them with their employees as well, and the teachers. On your additional goal that you didn't put in but you asked for, which is the MHS start time, I know Ms. Bodenhedinger and I have talked in detail about this. The one thing I will say, I completely agree with having the conversation and working towards that. I will say it's a 2-year process, so I don't want people to think this is going to happen next fall. I think communication, as we've heard, it takes, to get the community to change is difficult.
Okay.
I don't think, personally, I mean, I don't think it's realistic to say we're gonna change next fall. But who knows? I mean, maybe we could, because everything's new.
May I? You know, in a pre-COVID world, I hosted a meeting of, on this topic, and we had representatives from 3 or 4 different districts that had changed their start times, and a bunch of people from other districts that were looking to do it. And across the board, pretty much everybody says that it's a very cumbersome process that takes pretty much 2 years in order to do. When you're talking about busing, you're talking about getting the community on board, there's unions, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. This is not the same world, and because so many other things are topsy-turvy, so to speak, it may be easier to pull off in a shorter time frame, but you know, I don't know if you've had conversations with your colleagues around the state around it?
I think that a lot of people have had really extensive committees to review the research and have taken a very long time to do that.
Yeah.
The research is pretty clear at this
It's
point.
Slam dunk. There's no disputing it from any research anywhere.
Yep, so I think a lot of time has been spent by other communities doing that. And if we start from a place that the research is clear, it is accurate, there's no real debate between the research, then I think we can get down to the issues pretty
The
quick.
logistics.
And I appreciate all the feedback. I'm gonna shoot for the stars and settle for the moon.
Further
Go for it.
discussion
Go for it.
Go for it.
on the motion, no, Ms. Hennessy.
Thank you. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't say, goal number 3. Frankly, I'm gonna already say to you, positive remarks on how you have led us and been very open to a lot of communication on a subject that was constantly changing. So I'm appreciative, I'm glad to see it there, because I think we have to continue to strive for reaching that goal and working together, but I appreciate all of your effort that you put out there. And goal number 4 around the bias and racism issue, I think it's important because it's such a topic that we all need to address, and I appreciate you having that on here.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion to approve the goals. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Policy 6.110, personnel records.
Excellent. So I'd like to make a motion for approval of policy 6.110, personnel records. As you will see, there are some minor amendments that have been suggested. I think that was really more what HR really is driving force about what we needed to do. So, motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Policy 6.111, certification.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion for approval of policy 6.111, certification. Sorry. As notes, Ms. Matthews did contact me about a word that appeared that it had dropped off. So I did add that back in 2A. So just so you know. So I make a motion to approve with that amendment.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any further discussion? Ms. Bodenhenger.
The title of this, is the title that we had prior, but is that across the board, like other school committees use that? I just, like, when I first started reading it, I was thinking, this really only applies to teachers. But then later on, there are other certifications, but there are many employees in the district that are not certified to do their jobs. So I was just curious.
This was how we've handled it. I can do a check against MASC. Honestly, this was not one that I went back to do a comparison at this point, because it had been something that had been there for a while. So we did just move forward with more of an update. But if you would prefer, we could table and I could look up information for you.
I mean, I don't need to make more work for you. I mean, it really only covers people in the district for whom they need a certification to do their job.
Right.
So, it's fine. I'm being nitpicky. That's fine.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion to approve, all those in favor, opposed, carries. Policy 6.112, criminal background.
Thank you. So I'd like to make a motion to move forward with policy 6.112, criminal background check requirements. There was a friendly amendment that Ms. Matthews asked me to make with adding in criminal offender record information spelled out up higher within the document as opposed to just having Corey. So that way it is known right up front as to what that was. So that honestly seemed like a pretty good idea. So I'd like to make a motion to move forward with.
Has only one M.
Yes, and one M.
Motion
Okay.
made and seconded to approve. Any further discussion as amended? All those in favor, opposed, carried. 6.120, planning and record keeping.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to make a motion to move forward with policy 6.120, planning and record keeping. Modifications are within.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries. 6.180, staff absences.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did have a question on that.
On what?
Yeah, on the planning and record keeping.
Okay.
It's already in place, but you can ask the question.
Yeah, it's not really, so the second sentence says lesson plans up to date 1 week in advance shall be available. Just, that's it? You crossed everything else out? That's the end of the sentence? Shall be available.
Shall be available.
Okay, period.
I mean.
Then it needs a period. Okay.
Okay.
Carry on.
There's a period that's after the lines, but yes.
Okay, just seemed kind of missing something.
Is there a motion on 6.18?
I didn't get there yet, but okay. 6.180, which is the staff absent policy. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries. Policy 6.300, annual salary increase.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve 6.300. And yes, there was one amendment, sorry, I had to look for where the amendment was. There's an amendment that Ms. Matthews and I had discussed where in number 1, we do need to probably make comment that if approved in the annual budget, because as an annual, we would have to make a budget approval. So the line would now read, annual contractual salary increases will be given if approved in the annual budget, providing teachers meet requirements as stated in the contract that exists between the school committee and the Marlborough Educators Association. So it was just really a clarification that obviously we run on an annual budget each year. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to move forward with that.
Motion made and seconded to approve as amended. Any further discussion? Ms. Bodenheim.
I don't understand why we even need this policy. I mean, we have union contracts that state that they're going to get a raise, and everything's always contingent on budgetary issues. So I'm not clear why we have to have this policy to begin with.
Mr. Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the original policy, the annual increment, talks about not only for teachers but for paras, behavior techs, and others, that they have to work a certain number of days in the school year to be eligible to make their step increase. I think the step increase was the intended effect of the policy.
But isn't that spelled out in the contract?
No, it is not.
Really?
The columns, everything lays out in the contract as far as what the steps are, what they're paid. What this says is that you have to work at least half a year to actually gain a step. So if we hire you after half the year is
And
already
I
done.
gotcha. I thought we had made that change at one point.
I do not think so.
Okay.
I'm
All right,
happy to
well,
research it, but.
I will make a note for myself. Thank you. Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion to approve, all those in favor, opposed, carries. Acceptance of donors and gifts, Donor's Choice, Good Now School, Mrs. Catone's class, $288.13. Mrs. Keene's class, $572.11.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries. Donor's Choice, Good Now School, Mrs. Hall's class, $224.35 and $527.19.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries. Follett Book Buyback Program, Kane School, $10.50.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries. CACE Conference, Richer School, Dreambox Learning, $100. National Geographic Learning, $700.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries. Call for Mass Executive Office of Education, FY21 Remote Learning Support Services Grant, $259,600.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. We have an outstanding action item to take a vote on. Is there a motion?
Motion to, continue remote learning with a projected return date of January 11th. Indulge me here for a second, though. The problem is, we don't have a school committee meeting until the 12th.
I have a suggestion.
So I would ask that we plan a meeting for the week before.
Can I throw this out? I want to let everyone know now, I am fully intending on hopefully being back to school on the 11th. I would say if something changes and numbers go through the roof or something changes, we call an emergency meeting at that point, rather than schedule a meeting for no.
Okay.
If
then I
everything's
will-
in the ballpark of where we are now, we're going back to school.
All right, well, then I make a motion to continue remote learning with a projected return date of January 11th for hybrid. The superintendent, working with, I guess, the principals, will have to determine which cohort returns and how the balance works at that point.
We're going to start with B.
Okay.
We're going to start with B.
Right now, we're going to start
First
with
thing
B.
we've said that made Mrs. Ryan happy. On the motion to approve staying in remote learning through January 11th, motion made and seconded. Further discussion, Mrs. Hennessy.
Thank you. I'm just curious, though, what's going to be the lever that's going to have us plan that special meeting? And is that going to be something that you're going to be calling, you're going to be calling?
Superintendent's going to be calling.
Excuse me?
Superintendent will be calling if
Okay,
he
I'm
comes and says, things have changed because of X, Y, Z, we'll call a special meeting the week before.
Okay, I'm just looking for the clarity, just so
Yep.
that we're all on the same page about it, so
Yep.
thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Gary?
So this it's relevant to this vote, but it's also, you know, a couple of callers mentioned consistency. We've talked about consistency. It's important to note that if we stay out, so we do fully remote, that lends some consistency. If we are, you know, stubbornly staying out because we said we're going to go for so long, even though everything is great, the virus goes away, whatever, it's still on the side of safety for the students and staff. If we go the other side and we send them back to school because we're told it's safe, and at some point it becomes not safe, but we're stubborn that we said we're going to be consistent, so we keep them in school, then that errs on the side of not safety, dangerous for them. So I think that it's important to note that for this this call.
Mrs. Matthews.
I completely agree with what you're saying, Mr. Geary, but again, I go back to our conversations we had in August. We have to set that goal of attempting to get them back in. And I think that's what we're doing by saying, we know we can recognize the holidays are going to be a difficult time. And we can ask our families, especially the 50% that we feel wants to return, please do your best to keep those numbers under control. Right? I mean, it's a community thing.
Further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion, all those in favor? All those opposed? Carries. Thank you very much. Reports of subcommittees. Ms. Tennessee.
Thank you. We will be having a policy subcommittee meeting to move forward on new policies on Thursday, the 12th, and we'll bring forth what we can coming to you soon. Thank you.
Any other reports of committees? Seeing none, members forum. Any members? Ms. Matthews.
I have two things. One, I reviewed the warrant and I signed it. Two, I would like to briefly report out the delegate assembly resolutions that were voted on per our votes prior. I will say that all 10, 8 went the way we voted. One went, so number 1, we voted yes, it went yes. Number 2 went yes. Number 3 went yes. Number 4 went yes. Number 5. We voted no on number 5. Number 5 was supporting increased federal support and stimulus funding for public K through 12, and which had the whereas referring to more taxes, and I think that's why we were all